Hey trackers, I'm under a bridge on the South Fork Eel River, and this is a really good place to look at dog tracks. And right here you can see obviously tracks of humans and their tires, but because people are here, they usually bring their dogs down here to play at the river, and so there are tons of dog tracks everywhere, and this is just a great opportunity. I would like to show you how to identify dog tracks. Here's a dog trail where the dog is using a galloping gait. So there's the right front track, the left front track. This is a second dog. This is the right hind, and this is the left hind. Now I want to use this trail to show you the size difference between front and hind tracks on a dog, but also to just demonstrate what dog tracks look like. And this is a really long gait, or excuse me, really long stretched out run, because it's the first track landed right here, second, third, and fourth, and that's a very long stretch right there, probably 5-6 feet long. So this animal was running full out, and it landed first with the front 2 feet. The hind feet passed the front and landed on the ground and pushed off into the next jump as it was running, and this is the fastest gait for dogs. So I want to show you these tracks and how to identify dog tracks. Okay, this first track that we're looking at here is the right front track of the dog. So in this track, what you're seeing is 4 toes and a metacarpal pad. Now the pad is relatively wide here. Whoops. Wide this way, and a little bit comes to a point up here. Now notice, as compared to, say, a mountain lion track, this comes to more of a point. There are no lobes up here. This dog, you can kind of see that there are 2 lobes down there. Some of them have 3, which can be confusing because mountain lions have 3. So dogs have a toe 1. Most breeds have a dew claw, which is toe number 1, located further up the wrist. You don't often see it in the tracks. So this is toe number 2, 3, 4, and 5. They show claws. Usually their claw marks are relatively wide, blunt, and that's because dogs do a lot of walking around on concrete surfaces, and it wears their claws down. Some domestic dogs also get claws trimmed by veterinarians, so the blunt claws is characteristic of domestic dogs. Your wild canines, of course, don't do that. They don't maintain their claws like that. So, normally on dogs, these outer 2 toes are somewhat oval and somewhat also angular. The inner edge right here comes to slight angle right here. It comes to like a little point. This is almost a triangle shape on some of them. Some breeds of dogs, it's more easy to see that than others. The leading toes are usually oval in shape. Dog tracks often splay so that each toe points in a different direction. Your wild canines, a lot of times, their toes all tend to point forward because they have stronger muscles in their feet, and because they're outdoors all the time, their toes don't splay when they're running as much as domestic dogs, although they do splay. So it's a subjective call on that. So your overall look of a dog track, kind of oval in a way. Kind of oval, somewhat maple leaf shaped in a way, because the toes all stick out in different directions when they're splaying. They don't always splay. Let's look at the next track. Okay, here's the next track in the sequence. This is also a front track. This is the left front track. So notice how wide this pad is and how long, relatively triangular shaped. And here is scale. 3 inches is our scale here. Tracks a little over 3 inches with the claws. So this is again a front track. This one is the left front, and again you're seeing very blunt claw marks, thick, wide appearance of those claws. They're close to the toes. They're almost right at the very tip. You can see a little connection right there between the toe mark and the claw mark. You can see a little hint in here of fur marks. That's what those striations are. So this dog has some fur on its feet. That varies by breed of dog. Again, the outer toes have that angular shape to them, and they point outwards in different directions because this track is splayed. Each one of the toes points in a different direction. So note the single lobe on the end of this pad. And also, let's look at how wide this is, because I want to compare this width, which is about 1 3/4 inches. I want to compare the width of that to the hind track, which I'll show you next. Okay, we're still looking at the same dog trail, and this is the right hind track. Now notice the difference in the width of this metapad. So this is the metatarsal because it's on the hind track, metacarpal on the front track. It was 1 3/4 inches on that front. The hind one is not quite that, maybe 1.5 inches, and that's a subjective call. I'll show you a little bit on the next track how wide that is. So this is the hind track. The hind track on some dogs is smaller than the front track. It's a little bit narrower side to side, longer that direction. And dog tracks, of course, show 4 toes and claws. Not always. So don't always expect the claws on a dog track. So here on this hind track, the shape of these outer toes is a little more clear. You can clearly see that that's angular in shape right there. So those outer toes have a little bit of a triangular shape to them, and the leading toes are oval. Again, you can see striations in the mud here from fur marks. You can also see some stippling in the pad here, and those are called, forget the name. I'll look it up. Anyway, those are characteristic of dog tracks. They have this stippling in the pads. Coyotes have it too. Cats have more smooth skin on their feet, so you won't see those. Let's look at the next track. Okay, here is our left hind track of the dog, and here is the pad right here. Now a little more of the pad is showing, so let's measure that. So I'd say about 1.5 inches, but that's subjective because I can't see the whole pad. So this is again a very long oval shaped track, and the outer toes angular in shape, leading toes oval, very nice clear blunt claw marks there, kind of wide blunt claw marks. This is the left hind track of our dog, and right here, see this little mark right there and this sort of round mark. These are the pads of the metatarsal pad on this hind track. So some wild canines also show this. The little tiny pad or lobe of the pad right there, a large middle one that's kind of relatively round or oval, and then there would be another one over there. Some trackers call those wings because they kind of stick out like wings on the side of this pad. But that's one thing to look for in canine tracks on the hinds. So one thing I hear a lot is, what kind of dog leaves such a big track? Well, that's 3 inches. I mean, that's at least 3 inches. And dogs are related to wolves. So we have, over time, bred different dogs to be different sizes and shapes. And so they vary a lot in size. And their feet vary in size too. So dog tracks can be huge. I mean, they can be 4 inches easily. So there is a misconception in tracking that says, mountain lion tracks are huge and dog tracks are little. And that's because of our human perception. We believe that the larger predator has larger tracks, but that's not true. Mountain lion tracks that I find are average about 3 inches. So they're not really huge. Let's look at a big dog track for comparison. So this is the same dog that we've been following. And this is a front track. The thing here is it's just sliding forward in the mud a little bit, so the track looks huge. You can see the entire pad there. Looks a little closer to 2 inches there, but that possibly is because of the action of sliding in here. You can see the action where it slid forward, the mud is pushed forward. So action can make a difference in tracks and how big they look. This one, remember, we just looked at this track, but our perception takes in the entire size from here to here, even though the actual track is just these little imprints down here. See the edges of the toes right here? The edge of the toe right there and here? This is all fur marks. That's all mud pushed up by the action of the animal. So this track looks huge, but it's not really. It's not that big. Less than 3 inches, probably. Oops, that was metric. So, with the claws. So our perception, our eyes look at tracks. We perceive them as being larger or smaller based on the surface area that we can see. And sometimes that surface area is altered because the track slid in the mud. This track obviously slid forward in the mud because you can see a very long slip mark right there leading right up to that pad. Here's the pad. This part is not part of that track. That's just the action of the animal as it slipped forward in this mud. So it looks really big, but it's really not. It's the same dog, same foot. This is a front. It's got the nice wide pad, and you can see the single lobe here, 2 lobes back here. Now, some dogs do show 3 lobes, and that's I think it's a breed thing. I don't know how to tell the different breeds apart from their tracks. So there you have it, a little bit about dog tracks. Here's 2 different dogs, a smaller one and the one that we've been following. Both show the same characteristics that we've been looking at. The blunt claw marks, 4 toes, symmetrical arrangement of these toes. There's no leading toe. If you were to draw a line across them, they're very symmetrical. Cut it in half, and both sides are mirror images of each other. So that's your dog track. Oh, listen, there's a dog right there. So anyway, a lot of fur in the track on the right shows up, and you can see those little papillae, which are those bumps in there. I remembered the name. And this track is just a smaller dog. Let's look at behavior. Dogs are very active animals, and where they've been running around and playing, you'll just find a jumble of tracks like this. And everywhere you look is just dog tracks, because dogs are able to waste energy, whereas wild canines are not. Wild canines are trying to survive, and they can't afford to waste calories because they have to survive. But dogs, whenever they're out in the wild or out with their humans, they play, they run, they dig, they jump, they do all kinds of things and waste a lot of energy that a wild canine cannot do. So all of this jumble here is just dog tracks everywhere. And that's the behavior of dogs. Because we feed them, they don't have to hunt for their food. They can afford to use a lot of energy and expend a lot of energy in play.